In this tutorial, what we're going to do is take a look at making a bit of a program using the digital compass on the BBC microbit. So we've got a number of the ingredients that we need to be able to do this now. We can use variables, which we'll need because we're going to take a reading from the compass and we'll need to store it, and it's always going to be different. And we're going to need conditionals or if statements, as we say as well, so that we can say that under, depending on what the reading is that comes from the compass, we can then take appropriate action to show something else to the user. So before we get too far stuck into reading the pseudocode and looking at everything else, let's think about how we need this to work and think about how we can construct that pseudocode. So here's a picture of a compass that I picked up from a Google image search, and as you know, the compass works by giving you a number of degrees from north that you are. So if you were pointing dead north, the reading you'd get would be 0. If you were pointing dead east, you'd get a reading of 90. If you were southeast, you'd be 135, 180. You get the idea, up to 359 degrees, which would be just before being north again. So how's our program going to work? Well, I'm not going to try and do all the fine individual graduated parts of these. I'm just looking to give the 4 ordinal values of the compass of north, south, east and west. So what that means is I need to divide the readings up so that I get something sensible each time. So what I think I'll do, let's tackle east first because that's going to be the easiest one. What I think I'm going to say is that when I take a reading from the compass, if I get a reading that's 45 degrees or more, okay, so if it's 45 degrees or more, and as long as it's less than about 135 degrees, so if it's in that band, if it's in that sort of band like that, I'm going to class all of that as east. It's not ideal, but that should work pretty well for what we want. So that'll be close enough. And when I'm talking about south, what I'm going to say is that if it's more than 136, if it's 136 or more degrees, because 135, we'd be classing that as east. If it's 136 or more, then that's south, as long as it's not more than 225. So again, this band of any readings in that band there, that can be classed as south. The same thing again for west. So I've got the idea that as long as the reading is 225 or more, and as long as it's less than 315, then that's classed as west. My final one is north. That's a slightly trickier one, purely because if it's greater than 315 degrees, okay, I'm not going to get any readings above 360, so that's nothing to worry about. But if it's greater than 315 degrees, or if it's less than 45 degrees, then we're going to class that as north. So that's what we're working to achieve. So let's look at how we do that as pseudocode. And again, before we even look at the code, we can start to think a little bit about what the steps are going to need to be. So the first step I'll need to do is to calibrate the compass, because it won't work otherwise. And then what I want is I want to take lots and lots and lots of readings, don't I? So I'm going to need a loop. It'll be one of those while true loops because the program doesn't do anything else. It's solely is going to work as a compass. So I'll need to set up a while true loop to keep taking readings. And inside that loop, I suppose my process will need to be to take a reading from the compass and then do something like an if statement with all those different combinations that we just described a second ago. So that way I know which direction I'm facing. I can probably store that in a variable if I wanted, but that'll tell me which direction I'm facing, and then once I do that, I'll then print that direction onto the microbit. I'll use the display, or I'll use a display.show or something like that to show the direction. So let's write that as pseudocode, which is already sat for us here. Let's see how I did. Calibrate compass, good. Then I've got a while true, so I've got that here. There's my while block starting and stopping there. And I'm picking up the reading from the compass, and then I've got my series of if and else if statements. So I've said that if it's less than 46 and greater than 316, that's my north, because remember, less than 46, greater than 316. I say that if it's not less than 46, or it's not greater than 316, then what do we see if the heading is a number smaller than 136? And if it is, that's east. And if it's not that, then let's see if it's a number smaller than 226, and then we'll print a south. And if it's not north, and it's not east, and it's not south, it must be west. So that gives me a nice fallback position that I can take there as well. So that's how I'm going to write my program. I could have used another else if here as well, I suppose. I was just being a little bit lazy when I did that. So let's take a look at the actual code that goes with that then on the microbit. So I'm going to pick up that code. using the mouse, Control and C to copy, which should be an old hand at that point now, into Mu. I've got that open, some code from a previous lesson. I'm just going to delete that and then paste Control V on, and you can see everything I just described written up as Python code just here, which I can then push onto my device with the flash key. Now, the thing that you don't see on here, which is all handled and automated for you, is what happens when you do this compass calibration step. When you ask it to do a compass calibration, you'll get a message, first of all, that asks you to draw a circle. You'll see that very slowly scrolled across the screen. And then what will happen on the display, once it's said draw a circle, you'll see a single LED on dead center on the microbit. What you then need to do is to tilt the microbit, quite a steep angle actually, and then roll it around in your fingers to draw a big circle shape. And once you've drawn a few big circles enough times, you'll get a little smiley face. The microbit will show you a little picture of a smiley face, and then the rest of your program will run from that point forward. So I've actually just done that while I've been talking to you. That's about how long it took in real time. And now I've got mine and I'm rotating it around, and eventually I can see the direction that I'm facing start to change a little bit. Now, at this point, and this is in the notes on the web page, but it's just worth remembering this. A compass, just like any magnetic compass, can be affected very easily by objects made from metal, or I don't know, like a PC casing, or anything that has got magnets in it, or that uses magnets at all, so things like motors as well. They use a lot of magnetism. Probably the building you're in has probably got a lot of metal in it as well. So as a result, when you're using a microbit, don't be surprised if you get unusual readings, or if, for example, you know which way north is, but the microbit doesn't report that. The best way if you ever wanted to use the compass to actually test it would be to get the battery pack that comes with the microbit, put your two batteries inside it, and then go and stand in the middle of a field in an open space so that you don't have any of those things influencing your compass, and then try your compass program then, and hopefully you'll get a much more consistent set of results. When you're testing it in a classroom plugged into a PC, if you are able to spin it around and you are able to get the occasional different reading, then that'll give you some comfort that it's doing something, but again, don't expect it to be accurate until it's actually out in the open. So the next thing you can now do is you can start to think a little bit about the badge tasks that we've got. We've got some really nice ones in here as well. The first one's quite straightforward, just to get you feeling comfortable with using something. It asks you to show images. To do that, I suggest you look back at previous week's notes. I think in week 1 we did some stuff with drawing faces and images, or it might be week 2, so maybe look back in the notes. For the gold task, we're going to add some extra features on the bottom, maybe another if block down here, to add a sort of a survival mode so that it shows an SOS message to someone if they ever needed it, or it flashes on and off using something called Morse code. So have a go with that and see how you get on.